The plane aisle was crowded and tense as passengers shuffled toward their seats on the early morning flight, the air filled with the mix of coffee steam and jet fuel, when Aaliyah, a young black billionaire dressed simply in jeans and a blazer, stopped in front of her assigned row, her ticket clutched tight in her hand, only to find a white passenger already sitting there, stretched out with a smirk as if the seat belonged to him. His voice loud enough for nearby travelers to hear as he said, "This spot is mine now, you can take another one." Laughter rippled from a few rows back, some passengers whispering, others pretending not to notice. But Aaliyah's heart pounded, not from fear, but from anger at the sheer arrogance. Her lips pressed together, her hand tightening around the ticket, because she knew what it said, and she knew this was not going to pass quietly. The hum of the plane seemed to grow louder as eyes turned to watch what she would do next. The flight attendant hurried over, her smile polite but nervous, clearly wishing the problem would vanish on its own, asking if there was some confusion. Yet when Aaliyah calmly showed her boarding pass, the man leaned back in the seat, crossing his arms, saying, "I got here first. Let her find somewhere else." The audacity in his tone made the row behind gasp, and still the attendant hesitated, afraid of making a scene. Aaliyah's chest rose and fell as she glanced around, seeing passengers avert their gaze, unwilling to stand for her though they knew she was right. The silence felt heavy, but just as the attendant tried to persuade her to simply move, the captain's voice crackled over the speaker, requesting all boarding to pause, the engines that had been warming stilled, the entire cabin going quiet as the pilot himself stepped out, his eyes sweeping the room, demanding to know what was delaying departure. And suddenly the weight of justice shifted in the air. The passenger in her seat tried to talk fast, pointing at Aaliyah, trying to make her look unreasonable, but the captain was not blind. His stern gaze landed on Aaliyah's ticket, and then back at the man slouched defiantly, his jaw tightening as he called security over the intercom, announcing the flight would not leave until the issue was handled. Passengers murmured, phones lifted to record, while Aaliyah sat tall, refusing to move, her voice steady at last as she said, "This is my seat. I am not moving because someone else decided I should." The words rang in the cabin like a verdict, and though the man tried to bluster, he was suddenly gripped by two security officers who appeared from the jet bridge. Pulling him up roughly as his protests turned to desperate excuses, the cabin broke into scattered applause, Aaliyah's eyes shimmering with both relief and fire as she exhaled slowly. Though the story was not yet done, the man was escorted off the plane, his luggage dragged behind, and as the passengers resettled, Aaliyah took her rightful seat, her ticket now resting on the armrest, like proof of quiet victory. The captain himself approached, lowering his voice as he apologized, not just for the delay, but for the hesitation she had been forced to endure, assuring her this flight would not move forward under disrespect. The crowd around her seemed different now, faces softer, whispers filled with admiration, yet it was the silence in her own heart that meant the most. She had not backed down, she had not let the world diminish her. As the engines roared to life again, the wheels ready to lift the aircraft into the sky, a single truth settled deep inside her. Strength is not given by wealth or applause, but in refusing to surrender when the world dares to push you aside. And as the plane finally took off, her story became the lesson every witness would carry forever. Stand tall, because no one has the right to steal your seat in life. Aaliyah stepped off the plane hours later into the crowded terminal, the buzz of travelers rushing to their gates and announcements echoing overhead. But the weight of what had just happened clung to her like the scent of jet fuel still in her hair. Reporters had already caught wind of the grounded flight, cameras flashing as they tried to push microphones toward her, asking how it felt to stand her ground, asking if she planned to press charges. Yet she walked calmly, her gaze fixed ahead, her quiet dignity more powerful than any words she could offer. She had not done it for attention. She had done it because it was right. But she knew this moment would echo far beyond one stolen seat. The crowd parting as if they sensed the strength in her steps. Strangers clapping softly, others whispering her name. Though none of them knew the full truth of who she was, later that night, in the quiet of her penthouse overlooking the city lights, she sat with a steaming cup of tea, her phone buzzing non-stop with messages from board members and CEOs, from friends and even rivals who had seen the footage that had already gone viral, millions of views climbing by the hour. Her assistant's voice played over voicemail saying, "You've started something bigger than you know. The company stocks are soaring. The people are calling you a symbol of resistance." And still Aliyah stared out at the horizon, her reflection in the glass a reminder of the young girl she once was, the one who had been told to sit down, to stay quiet, to take less than she deserved. And now here she was, proof that standing up, even in something as simple as keeping a seat, could ripple out into the world as something unstoppable. The very next day, she was invited to speak at a conference, her name headlining the program above executives who had once ignored her calls. She stood on the stage in a sharp black suit, the lights bright and hot against her skin, her voice steady as she told the story, not of a billionaire, not of a boardroom victory, but of a young woman who had been tested in front of hundreds of strangers on a flight and who refused to let injustice win. The audience was silent, leaning forward on every word, until her closing line rang out, "We cannot always control how the world sees us, but we can control how we stand when it tries to push us aside." The room erupted in applause that shook the walls, faces shining with tears, with pride, with the power of her defiance. And that night, as she returned home, her steps slower but lighter than the day before, she realized she had not just reclaimed a seat on a plane, she had reclaimed a piece of herself that would never again be silenced. Her name now trended across every platform, her face gracing headlines, yet she did not smile for fame. She smiled because she knew she had given voice to so many who had none. As she turned off the lights and let the city glow spill into her room, she whispered a quiet promise to herself and to all who had watched. Never let anyone steal your place in this world. Because when you refuse to move, you don't just keep your seat, you give others the courage to rise from theirs, and if you believe in that kind of courage, share her story and carry it with you wherever life tries to test your strength. The morning sun painted the city gold as Aliyah stepped into her office tower, employees lining the lobby in silence, their faces full of pride as they watched her pass. Whispers of respect carrying like music through the marble hallways. She had always been their leader, but today she was something more. She was living proof that even in the smallest battles, courage mattered. Her assistant handed her a newspaper, still warm from the press, the front page filled with her picture. The headline blazing, "Billionaire refuses to move." Flight grounded for justice, she smiled faintly. Not for herself, but for every girl who would read those words and feel stronger. Hours later, she sat across from investors who once questioned her, their voices softer now, their eyes unable to meet hers as they praised her resilience. She listened quietly, then spoke with steady authority, telling them respect cannot be bought, it must be lived. The room fell silent. The weight of her words undeniable, and for the first time in years. She felt no doubt about her place at the table. Her seat could never be stolen again. Not here, not anywhere. As dusk fell, she visited her old neighborhood, the cracked sidewalks and worn fences still familiar. Children ran to her, eyes wide as they called her name. Their parents nodding with gratitude, she knelt among them, sharing laughter. Her heart swelling as she realized her story had reached them too. It was no longer about one billionaire on a plane, it was about every soul told to move aside, every voice ignored now lifted by her defiance. Her courage had become theirs that night, standing on her balcony with the city lights twinkling below. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She had faced humiliation. Silence and doubt, yet she had not moved. She had turned a stolen seat into a symbol, a delay into destiny, and as she whispered into the night sky, "No one can take from you what you refuse to surrender," she knew her journey had only just begun. If her story moved you, carry it forward, because sometimes the fight for one seat can inspire the strength of a generation.